So I declare this meeting open and you are all welcome in the meeting. Can we check if there are any apologies, Committee Secretary?
Chair, we have a full delegation, Chair, with the new member of the DA that we were just informed, Mr. Bergman, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We note also that Honorable Cuthbert is still listed because the new member's not been ACT, the change has not been ACT'd yet, but correct. Nevertheless, very welcome to the new member from the Democratic Alliance. Yeah, we are a very robust committee, but we work very well across party lines, so you're very welcome. Can we have a move and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda? I see Honorable Mbuyani's hand is up. Honorable Mbuyani.
Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, I propose that we adopt the agenda as reflected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Malamacha.
Thank you, Chair. I second Comrade Mbuyani for the adoption of agenda.
Thank you. Our agenda is duly adopted, so we are here to receive a briefing by SABS on its strategic and annual performance plans for 2023-24 financial year. Can I check who's on the platform from the South African Bureau of Standards?
Chair is Dr. Bassoon, but Dr. Zalk will do the introduction, Chair, for them. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Zalk.
Yes, morning, Chair, and morning, honourable members. From the DTIC side, it's myself, Nimrod Zalk, the Acting Deputy Director General of the Sector Branch. I'm also accompanied by Dr. Chenge Damana, who is the Chief Director of Technical Infrastructure in the branch, and Ms. Ntombi Matamela, who is the Chief Director of Operations in the Office of the Director General. On the SABS side, perhaps I could introduce the Chair, Dr. Sandile Malenga, and the SABS management team led by the Acting COO, Dr. Sadhvir Bisoon. But I'm not sure if the SABS team would like to make any further introductions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bisoon.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson. I'd just like to include the introductions of 3 of the executive members of the SABS that have joined us this morning. It's the Chief Corporate Services Executive, Mr. Alizo Makele, the Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Lungelo Ntobongwana, as well as the Acting CFO, Ms. Lerato Matras. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. You are all welcome. Can I hand over to you, Dr. Bassoon, for the presentation? Who's sharing the presentation, Mr. Hermans? Okay, there we go.
It's Dr. Bassoon, Chair.
Dr. Bassoon, we can see the presentation, but we can't hear you. You may proceed.
Right. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, and thank you for confirming the presentation being visible. Honourable members, this morning we will be sharing the presentation to the Portfolio Committee, and this is the SABS Corporate Plan 2023-2024, specifically focusing on this financial year. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. The contents of the presentation has 6 elements to it. The first being an overview of the mandate, the structure, the vision and services of the Bureau. I'll briefly highlight the 45 output targets by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, to which the SABS had focused to align to, which is included in our submission, as well as measuring our performance for the financial year 2023-2024, which is part of our corporate plan scorecard. We move on to the specific contribution of the SABS to DTIC Group 45 output targets, a scope on our financial sustainability, which is basically our income statement and budgets for, the budgets for 23-24. And lastly, we'll close out on the capital expenditure focused for 2023-2024. So just an overview on the mandate, the structure, vision, and services. Colleagues would appreciate that SABS is a long-standing organization, and it was established in 1945, in excess of 72 years in existence, with the primary focus and objective to develop, promote, and maintain South African national standards. Second to that, we are responsible to promote quality with respect to commodities, products, and services. Last but not least, we are responsible to render conformity assessment services with matters connected herewith. Primarily, the conformity assessment services that we provide includes certification services, which has both two parts to it, which is system and product certification. We'll talk a bit about that later on. Testing services, as well as we provide a service on advisory services, specifically to SMMEs in terms of capacitating them to deliver value-added quality products and services. It is also important to appreciate that we are a Schedule 3B entity, so we get 35% of our income comes from grant funding from DTIC, as well as our sustainability from a revenue perspective comes from 65% of the services that we offer in terms of revenue, and that's the services certification and testing services, including training as well. We operate in a very highly competitive market. SABS is not the entity providing conformity assessment services in the marketplace. There's a number of highly established globally or global organizations with global footprints that operate in the ecosystem as well. So there's more than 35 certification bodies operating in South Africa that provide similar, if not the same type of services of the SABS in terms of conformity assessments. However, it is important to note that SABS is the only entity that develops South African national standards. So we have the mandate and the monopoly of developing South African national standards, which are relevant tools and solutions that support the public and private sector directives. In addition, there are more than 1,000 accredited test laboratories in the marketplace and more than 200 inspection bodies, as accredited by SANAS, the national accreditation system that provides services in the marketplace. So just by the numbers of quality assurance service providers in the marketplace, you would appreciate that we are operating in a very competitive market, and financial sustainability is a key factor for the SABS. Just to highlight on the appointment of the board of the SABS, Dr. Sandile Malinga is present in this meeting as well. He's the chairperson of the board, and the colleagues have been appointed effective 1st December 2022. There are 7 members, 8 including Dr. Malinga, and the colleagues have been really moving forward in terms of establishing the governance framework for the board as well as for SABS as an entity. So just to give you a highlight on the 3 committees that have been established to date, there's the Audit and Risk Committee, and that's chaired by Ms. Gloria Mguni, the Human Capital, Social and Ethics Committee, chaired by Dr. Nandipa Madiba, and last, the Finance and Investment Committee, chaired by Dr. Ron Josias. So in terms of SABS services, this representation gives you a picture of the value chain of SABS services, starting from standards right through to the portfolio of conformity assessment services. Standards are the heartbeat of the organization. and standards are developed through a number of technical committees. The SABS currently manages and governs in excess of 280 technical committees and subcommittees responsible for the development of South African national standards. These are not SABS standards, these are South African national standards, and we go through a very rigorous process, which is part of a legislated mandate as well, to develop these national standards. So these national standards are in excess of 7,500 that we've published, and they are then used by both the SABS and the industry and the public sector as well in terms of achieving their mandates. So from an SABS perspective, the commercial entities testing certification utilizes these standards to provide their services into the market. And all these services that the SABS provides to the market are voluntary services to allow for an element of self-regulation in the marketplace. So we're not a regulator. We develop solutions and quality assurance services for voluntary uptake by the marketplace. The second element is the training. So we provide a wealth of training services, and these are primarily focused on management system standards. Typical example is ISO 9000, quality management system, the ISO 14000, environmental management systems, and the likes. We also created an advisory part of our services, and this is to support SMMEs and entrepreneurs on building their capacity to implement these national standards so that they can deliver quality products and services to the marketplace while achieving and compliance to these national standards. The SABS mark scheme is also a very important aspect of our products and services, which is under the certification division. So the mark scheme is basically a label, which is referred to as SABS approved, whereby a manufacturer goes through a rigorous process of audits as well as testing of their products to make sure that their products comply in the marketplace, and they are basically given the opportunity to include SABS mark scheme, the mark approval on their products. And last but not least, testing services. There are more than 30 laboratories that are accredited by SANAS with a wide variety of services that we offer under various sectors and subsectors as defined in the middle part of the representation. These are a few of the sectors that we provide services to in terms of the entire portfolio of services.
Good morning.
From standards right through
I'm fine, yourself?
to testing.
Hi, Mr. Hermans, can you just mute your mic, please?
Thank you,
Apologies,
Chairperson.
Dr. Bassoon. Carry on.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the sectors and or subsectors include building and construction, chemicals, electrotechnical, electronic appliances, energy efficiency, lighting technology, petrochemicals, textiles, and leather. Just a few to mention as represented in the slide. All our services are SANAS approved in terms, accredited. And this basically shows the market that the SABS has the capacity, infrastructure, resources to provide our testing and service and certification services to the marketplace. Okay, I'm going to try and move to the next slide. It's apparently giving me a problem to change the slide. Try one more time. Chair, there appears to be a delay. Great. So we move on to the next slide in terms of the organizational vision and core values. The organizations, as our aspiration is to ensure that we are a trusted standardization and business assurance solution provider of choice. And you know, it's well constructed in terms of putting the statement of choice, because as presented, we are operating in a very competitive market. So we need to create the value proposition for our customers, for them to maintain their services with the SABS, as well as ensure that we create the value in terms of meeting their objectives as well. Underpinned, what underpins the vision is the core values, and there are 5 of them. We look forward to ensuring that we provide excellent services, operational excellence, including efficiencies, focus on our customers and make sure that we deliver value-added services to our customers. Accountability, ensure that we are answerable to all our actions and committed to providing these services to all our stakeholders. And the integrity, we need to make sure that we walk the talk and ensure that everything that we do is an open and transparent matter as an independent, impartial provider of services to the marketplace. And last but not least, innovation, making sure that we are agile, we can respond effectively to market requirements, as well as to policy directives as well. The strategic objectives of the organization are 5. The core being to develop, promote, and increase the use of standards. The second being to provide integrated conformity assessment service solutions. The third being achieve and maintain financial sustainability. This is very critical for the SABS, because 65% of our revenue comes from the services that we provide to the marketplace. Ensuring that we provide continuous improvement in internal systems and processes, and this also includes an enablement through digital technology. And last but not least, creating and maintaining a high-performance culture in terms of ensuring that our staff members are adequately equipped to respond to a highly dynamic and changing marketplace. The value proposition of the SABS are multifold, and I'll just highlight a few of them. We are one of the, and I would propose that it is SABS is the key quality infrastructure institution because everything stems from a national standard. It provides the technical solutions and tools in the form of South African national standards, and thereafter delivering quality assurance products and services into the marketplace. Our portfolio of services, including our national standards, allow easy access of products and services by industry to local, regional, and international markets. And we also provide, these are state-of-the-art solutions according to international best practice. So we participate very actively through our technical committee members and representatives in ISO and IEC. ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. IEC is the International Electrotechnical Commission. Those are the international recognized bodies that develop international standards. By us participating, influencing these international standards, we thereby allow for an element of harmonization and adopt these international standards as South African national standards to address the multiplicity of challenges and opportunities as presented in the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The corporate plan, as presented, builds on the current SABS turnaround plan that we've implemented since 2021, and the various programs aligned to our legislative mandate and supporting policy initiatives as well, and not forgetting the direct output targets that the shareholder has put forward to the SABS to include as part of our corporate plan. One of the key focus areas of the corporate plan or the strategy for this year as well is to make sure that we transition to the new structure, which we've concluded, and I'll talk about that later on in the slides as well. I mentioned financial sustainability is a key pillar in terms of organizational growth and relevance, and we play a very important role in ensuring that we are aligned to the reimagined industrial priority sectors, and we contribute standards and conformity assessments solutions to the market around the industrial priority sectors as well. There are a number of programs and initiatives that are ongoing in the organization, and some of which include customer focus in terms of operational excellence, supporting the continental free trade area, and providing thought leadership and actively participating in the regional standards bodies. And this is ARSO and AFSEC. ARSO is the African Organization for Standardization, and we participate and contribute towards the harmonization of standards in the African continent so that South Africa can easily allow for the movement of manufactured goods and provision of services into the marketplace in the continent, thereby supporting the continental free trade area. The ultimate mandate of ARSO is to ensure that we have one harmonized standard for Africa, resulting in one test method for a product or a service to be offered, which results in one conformity assessment like a certification, etc. So 1:1:1, that will create a platform for movement, easier movement of goods and services within the African continent, and SABS plays a critical role in contributing and participating in various technical committees of ARSO and AFSEC in aligning and achieving this ambition for the continental free trade area. Just going on into the high level representation of the structure. So the board of directors is obviously the accounting authority to which the chief executive officer and management reports to. The acting chief executive officer is myself. We have three key roles, executive roles in the organization, which is the chief operations officer, and we've concluded the appointment of that role. Mr. Lungelo Ntomongwana joins us as part of this platform meeting. Unfortunately, our chief financial officer has resigned about a month and a half ago, but we have a very competent replacement who is the former general manager in finance, Lerato Matras, who's fulfilling that role. She's also been fulfilling that role for a couple of months last year, so she's well entrenched in terms of understanding what is involved as part of acting in the role of chief financial officer. And the chief corporate services officer, Mr. Lizo Makele, who is part of the meeting today. He's heading the role of incorporating your ICT, human capital facilities and security services under that portfolio. So currently where we are in terms of the chief executive officer appointment, the process of advertising the role has been completed by the board. It is within the auspices of the board. The closing date for the submission of interests for the role that closed about 2 weeks ago, and they're currently in the process of evaluating those submissions. In terms of the chief financial officer, we've created a task team, concluded the specification, and that has gone out to the market in terms of getting interests for fulfilling the role of chief financial officer at the SABS. Chairperson, I'm going to talk a bit about the publication of national standards and how we've segmented the national standards to align to the industrialization ambitions of the country as well. As mentioned earlier, it's through technical committees, and we house the governance process of developing these national standards. It's quite a rigorous process. It's a 6-stage process from initial step of a new work item being proposed, right through going to the committee for consensus development, going for public inquiry, which is another 60 days. So it's a lengthy process, but we try as far as possible to make sure that it is as efficient, and we manage those projects as effectively as possible. At any given point, there's in excess of 800 projects that the SABS manages in terms of standards development through the 280 technical committees in the standards division. So in terms of the priority sectors, we just highlighted majority of the priority sectors in terms of industrialization ambitions of Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. That's what the table represents. So the sectors include electrotechnical, ICT, steel, metal fabrication, automotive, construction, green economy, health economy, etc. The columns next to it include the number of standards that we've published already of the 7,500 standards that we have in existence. So in the electrotechnical space, and this is electronics, including electromagnetic compatibility, electrical equipment, etc., we have more than 1,600 standards that have been published, and these standards are developed through 24 technical committees and subcommittees put together. So it just gives you a categorization of the various of the numbers of standards and the technical committees that we have established to develop these national standards. Typically, agriculture and agro-processing, as another example, we've published 279 standards, and these reside within 19 technical committees and subcommittees of the SABS. So that's just a reflection of the length and the breadth of the standardization activities that we have at the SABS. Moving on into the certification divisions, and this is the commercial part of the business, which is, once again, to reiterate, certification and testing services are the core commercial revenue generating entities of the SABS. The certification business consists of management system certification, as well as the mark scheme, which I've alluded to earlier in the presentation. So a few of the management system certifications include 9000, ISO 9000, 14000, IT management system 27000, and ISO 50001, which is the energy management system, which is clearly a very important management system to be certified by industries as well as the public sector in terms of managing energy and reducing the energy demand as well. The mark scheme is basically a SABS approved certification scheme, whereby the bottom right corner you'll see the SABS mark of approval, where manufacturer can insert this logo of quality assurance once completion of the requisite and meeting the requisite requirements to be an SABS approved mark scheme holder. It provides assurance to the customers, to the consumers out there, that the products are manufactured consistently and they meet relevant South African national standards. The testing division has 4 pillars within it. The first being the normal testing of services of products, and these include sampling of products, testing of products, and analysis within the laboratory. It includes elements of environmental monitoring and a number of various categories of proficiency testing as well. The second element is technical evaluation and element of surveys. We do failure assessments, efficacy testing within this category. Normal conformity testing, there's elements of type testing, which is the full range of services and testing requirements within an entire standard, as well as we have an element of customer specific requirements. And this is the historical partial testing requirement, and it has subsequently transitioned to customer-specific testing requirements through a very rigorous contractual agreement between the SABS and the customer, requiring specific elements of a standard to be tested. We also have batch testing, non-destructive testing, and last but not least, calibration services, which are in-house calibrations, and we have a system of calibration which manages all the calibrations of equipments within the organization as well. So the DTI's 45 output targets. I'm not going to go into detail on these targets. Suffice to say that these have been reviewed by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, and we have been consulted on these as technical infrastructure institutions in terms of us supporting these various target outputs. So they are categorized into 12 categories, and in total there are 45. So I'm not going to go into the details, because these are basically the foundation and the directive for the various entities of Department of Trade and Industry to contribute towards the achievement of these output indicators. So you'll see significant amounts of investment, typical 200 billion of investment, and rand value is quite huge. These are for all the entities to contribute towards achieving this output targets. SABS is one entity, and that's responding to this, and our submission in this presentation provides for SABS contribution only. So you'd see that especially in terms of investment, or very minimal amount of investment, because we are not an investment organization, that we will provide, but somehow contribute to achievement of these targets. This is the second slide highlighting the various output targets, which I'm not going to go into details, as they have already been presented by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. In terms of measuring performance as part of our corporate scorecard aligned to the corporate plan, there are a few of the scorecard elements that we are highlighting here. The first being on the extreme top right-hand corner, the target in terms of supporting reimagined industrial priority sectors. And this is about ensuring that we develop standards aligned to the priority sectors. So in the corporate plan, we've included in excess of 50 specific standards that we have an understanding that will contribute towards the DTIC's priority sector, and these are commitments for the year. So we're saying at least 80% of these standards published must be concluded by the financial year end, bearing in mind that the element of control in terms of publication of these standards also reside within the various stakeholders that participate in the development of these national standards as well. The reporting to DTIC on the various output targets, that's basically our quarterly reports, and this includes any other ministerial directives as well as and when it comes during the course of the year. Our government and public policy engagement is very important. So we have put together a proposal on a minimum of 10 strategic engagements with government entities. And this is primarily to ensure that government entities utilize South African national standards as part of a solution or a tool or a framework in achieving a public policy or a regulatory directive. We certainly don't want public entities to go out, especially regulators, to go out and reinvent the wheel and establishing their own criteria and tools around regulating the industry if SABS already has technical solutions that are readily available for regulators to engage with. So our 10 engagements with public sector entities are quite important, and generally we go beyond the 10 on an annual basis, but we put forward from a baseline of 7. We're moving on to 10. In terms of engaging with our customer satisfaction and engaging with the customer centricity of our clients, we've put together a customer satisfaction survey, and we want to achieve a minimum of 75% of the customer satisfaction survey ratings. In order to expand our sustainability in terms of financial sustainability, increasing our revenue, we have proposed online courses, and that's 3 additional online courses from the existing portfolio of training services, 1 new certification scheme, and at least 2 new testing methods in the marketplace to cater for what the market requires from a testing perspective. Our financial sustainability, profitability, we looked at 1.6 million rand of profit, so it goes beyond breaking even. In terms of our cost to ratio income, 103%. And then we look at demographics in terms of SABS, in terms of the staff demographics and how we contribute towards the demographics of addressing women representation in the organization, youth, as well as people with disabilities. And the rates are 48% women for 2023-2024, youth 23%, and persons with disabilities 2%. So that is the corporate scorecard aligned to the corporate plan. Going beyond the corporate scorecard and the corporate plan, we have gone through a very rigorous process together with the DTIC in terms of really appreciating and understanding what the requirements are of the 45 output indicators and what SABS can do within our legislative mandate, within our current resources, our capacity and capabilities of the SABS in supporting the attainment of DTIC 45 target outputs. So the core focus of this presentation is going to go through our contribution to the 45 output targets. I'm not going to go to the details of every slide, but suffice I'm going to highlight on the outputs and the output indicators of the various submissions and our contributions to the various outcomes as put forward by the DTIC. So in terms of one of the outcomes, 40 billion rand additional local industrial output. Again, I must emphasize, this is for the entire DTIC entities to contribute 40 billion rand additional local industrial output. What is SABS within our mandate can do and support? We have been given the mandate of local content verification audits. And these audits and these projects come directly from the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. So we are proposing that the output indicators, percentage of the local content verification projects that are submitted by government entities through the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition to the SABS to be completed, and a minimum of 80% of these local content verification projects to be completed within the financial year. We estimate, based on the numbers that have been given to us, it's an indicative measurement of 15 local content verification audits to come our way in 2023 through the entity, through the shareholder. And the second element to this, in support of the first indicator, is the tender value that are submitted by government entities to the SABS to be completed. So again, if we achieve 80%, at least a minimum of the projects completed, will thereby achieve 80% of the tender value of these projects. The anticipated estimate is 2 billion rand worth of local content verification tender value projects for SABS to administer. So that's the general contribution of the SABS around local industrial output based on our mandate as a local content verification authority. In terms of new jobs created through interventions, we have focused on the non-permanent jobs, and this is specifically on an internship program. And we will categorize the output indicators and describe them as the number of non-permanent jobs. And these internships are non-permanent. They are annual basis. And every year we get a new batch of interns into the organization. For the year 2023, we're anticipating 65 interns employed for this period compared to the previous year. And this is the second year we're running an internship program of 60 interns employed in the prior year. When we move forward in terms of investment in Black Industrialist program, I think this is a very significant program that we need to contribute to. We haven't been focusing significantly on promoting SABS services and our portfolio of standards to Black Industrialist program. So our initiative was to ensure that we promote the standardization and quality assurance services to the Black Industrialist program, which is housed within the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, and ensure by promotion and uptake of these services that that the Black Industrialists, their portfolios of the services and the products that they provide in the marketplace become sustainable because they provide quality services aligned to national standards and meeting requirements of conformity assessments in the marketplace. So we're looking to host an open day for Black Industrialists to promote the SABS standardization and quality assurance services. And this is be done in conjunction with a particular date that we could secure with all the Black Industrialists within the program. In terms of support of programs in areas outside the 5 main metros, and I think this has always been a point of that has been presented to the SABS on a few occasions by the committee in terms of how do we now get into different areas outside of the main metros to promote the standardization quality assurance services. So we have put forward outputs of outreach and advocacy initiatives on both our standardization as well as conformity assessments services, a minimum of 5 outreach initiatives to promote standardization and quality assurance in specific districts outside of the 5 metros. So that's the target for 23-24 financial year, and it goes on to 7 and 10 in the outer years. Our support for SMMEs in terms of standardization and conformity assessments, we've ring-fenced a sum, which is 2 million rand. It's not a huge amount, as we are not in an organization that is responsible for investment and support. We need to manage our commercial activities in terms of revenue generation, but we've ring-fenced 2 million rand of support to SMMEs, and we'll implement a model of how we co-fund this in terms of services offered to SMMEs from an SABS perspective. So it could be on training, it could be an access of standards, it could be certification, and how we finalize a model to support the SMMEs in terms of their quality products and services. We're also looking at SMME support through our procurement spend, and we've put forward for 2023-2024 our contribution of 74.3 million rand procurement spend based on our current procurement demand, and this will be spent in supporting of SMMEs as well compared to the prior year of 72.9 million rand. So those are the 2 initiatives in terms of support of SMME. The supporting of programs in labor absorbing sectors. So the 2 sectors which we play a role in terms of standardization includes agriculture and the mining sector. And the 2 areas on standards development and conformity assessments, the first being we would put forward projects and standardization projects to publish at least 4 standards aligned to agricultural and the mining sectors, and subsequent years 6 and 7 standards thereafter. In terms of conformity assessments within the mining sector itself specifically, we've put forward indicators of certificates or permits, and this could be management systems or product certification. And it could also include energy management, especially in energy-intensive industries around the mining sector. How do we support these initiatives through certification and issuing of permits? And this is product certification permits to these entities. So we've put together 10 in the 23-24, 5 was the previous year, 15 and 20 in the outer years in terms of support of the mining sector. Market inquiries was something that we had to really think about in terms of how we contribute towards this particular outcome. SABS has the mandate to manage the World Trade Organization Technical Barriers to Trade Inquiry Point. And these are inquiries around national standards as well as regulations. So we've put together a turnaround time of 48-hour turnaround time to respond to any queries for information regarding standards and regulations within South Africa. This is something that we're looking forward to further enhance in the outer years, going on to 24-hour turnaround time in 2025, 2026. So we need to firstly manage that 48-hour turnaround time and see the number of initiatives coming through and how we respond and how we could further digitize the systems to enable a better response rate. In terms of the special economic zones, there's 2 new special economic zones that has been designated by the shareholder. Our contribution is to ensure that we provide services, conformity assessments, services, as well as standardization to these SEZs. It all starts with an agreement. It could be an MOU and subsequently move on to a memorandum of agreement with the SEZs in providing these services. So at least for 23-24, because it's a space that we haven't been engaging with, and there's a lot of opportunities that the SABS can provide in terms of standards services to SEZs and the organizations, companies in SEZs to develop quality products and services, we're looking at least one MOU with the SEZs to provide these types of services. The hosting of the Black Industrialist Conference, this is an important event as well, which SABS hasn't historically been participating in. We will certainly engage on being a participant as part of this conference to showcase the standardization services and conformity assessment services and promoting our services within this platform through an exhibition, stands, marketing, even to an extent maybe an opportunity to present at this forum as well. So this is one of the initiatives that SABS is looking forward to towards the Black Industrial Conference. This year is a significant year for South Africa in terms of hosting of a number of multilateral party conventions and conferences. One is the BRICS ministerial meeting. As part of the contributing towards the BRICS ministerial meeting, SABS has a collaboration with the BRICS national standards bodies. And this is a long-standing collaboration with the national standards bodies of the BRICS countries. This year, we'll be hosting the BRICS head of NSB's forum. And as part of this forum as well, we'll be looking to conclude a draft MOU as part of standardization cooperation between the BRICS NSBs in this financial year. This might take place as a proposed month in the proposed month of August. We've also been brought into the discussions of the hosting of the AGOA forum. This is once again a very important forum for the various members of AGOA within the African continent. And it has been proposed the SABS to convene a standardization of quality infrastructure event in the sidelines of the AGOA forum. We've drafting a paper, a position paper on this, or rather a concept paper for direct submission to the shareholder so that we can start the process of engaging and as well as providing the necessary support in terms of hosting this current event as part of a sideline event. From an energy perspective and establishment of the energy one-stop shop by the shareholder, there's a multiplicity of stakeholders that are engaged in this particular initiative. Within the SABS mandate and portfolio of services, we publish a number of standards in this area, and specifically on the energy efficiency scope of work, we have proposed that we publish at least 5 new standards or revised standards in support of energy efficiency as part of the energy contribution towards this particular output. The Continental Free Trade Area, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the significant contributions by the SABS in terms of harmonization of standards for the African continent in support of increasing the movement of goods and services within the continent. Currently, we participate in 35 of the harmonization committees of ARSO, which is the Regional Standards Organization. ARSO and AFSEC have been directly referenced in the Continental Free Trade Area as the 2 recognized regional standards bodies that are responsible for harmonization of standards in the African continent. So SABS is a member, council member, as well as member of the various technical committees. And we're proposing that we participate in at least 35 of the technical committees, which are aligned to South African industrialization ambitions as well, whereby we could promote the harmonization of these standards at the continental level as well. And the second part, in outer years, will be to increase our participation in the harmonization committees to 37 and 40 in the subsequent years of this submission. In terms of climate change initiatives, the anticipation is for the publication of a white paper on electric vehicles. Once again, standards is an important part as part of tools and standardization of equipment within this particular space. We generally publish and have published a few standards on electric vehicles. We propose in our contribution this year, we published 10 national standards, and this could be on a wide variety of scopes, some of which include battery technologies, include the holistic infrastructure, charging stations, etc., in support of the electric vehicle infrastructure in South Africa. So those are a minimum commitment of 10 standards for this year. In terms of testing, certification, and conformity assessments, we haven't really applied our minds. So at this point, we don't really have direct initiatives in supporting testing and certification schemes. However, this year, we have put forward our commitment to conduct a feasibility study on the type of conformity assessment services that will be required to support the electric vehicle industry or the sector. And based on the feasibility study, we'll be able to determine where SABS should work in, having an understanding that there might be other service providers in the marketplace that are providing similar services as well. So we must be quite cautious in terms of determining which space we want to play in from a commercial perspective. In addition to the green hydrogen technology, and this is certainly a game changer for the shareholder, as they have put forward as well, in terms of addressing climate change and supporting the just transition opportunity for South Africa, but more importantly on the export of green hydrogen from South Africa to other countries as well. So the establishment of a technical committee on hydrogen technology is a requirement for us to finalize, as well as developing a business plan for green hydrogen technology. And we also have an ambition to publish a few standards as well, based on the maturity level of the committee and the committee members and their direct contribution in supporting the development of these national standards as well. So we've already kicked off the work effectively on establishing a committee on hydrogen technology, and we look forward to this to progress in as the months unfold and the committee matures in terms of its program of work. In terms of the red tape reductions and interventions in support of the shareholder, digital enablement is a very important initiative for the SABS. We've ring-fenced a significant amount of capital expenditure allocation as part of our digital enablement. And we've put forward, because this is quite an expansive investment in digitalization of our systems, which will take a period of about 3 to 5 years as we unfold the investment and secure the effective implementation and execution of these projects. The year for 2023-24 is to implement a minimum of 2 digital solutions to improve operational efficiency. This could be enhancement of the laboratory information management system, as well as the certification information management systems, as well as part of the core conformity assessment commercial activities of the organization. Improvement of the development time of standards as well. I mentioned that we have a process that we need to abide by in terms of development of national standards, which is a part of our legislated mandate as well, and aligned to international best practice. And there's and this methodology is 6 steps that needs to take place, including public inquiry. We're looking at ensuring that we develop our national standards, and these are average days to publication of 320 days. As I mentioned, we publish in excess of about 350 standards on an annual basis. At any given time, we have 800 projects. We need to manage them effectively. But on average, for these standards that have been published, right from the start from which they have been introduced and logged in as a new work item proposal, right through the process and the final date of publication, we have proposed 320 days. Just to give an indication, ISO and IEC, these are the international standards bodies. They have an average, and these are months. It's 32 months, average of 32 months to publish international standards. But those are international standards, and we are developing standards on a national basis, so we can't compare ourselves to the lengthy processes that ISO has. That's why 320 days. But we do publish standards on which are direct adoptions of ISO standards within a very short period of time, between 5 to 6 months, and this is based on the requirements by the marketplace as well. We also have the opportunity to reduce the public inquiry opportunity if these standards are required from a legislative perspective and they are urgently needed in the market. So we substantiate the reduction of the publication time as well in terms of public inquiry. The last but not least is a recently included KPI by the shareholder, which is 20 case studies on success stories. And these are profiling of success stories impacted by the SABS, and these are our products and services to our clients. Based on our engagement with the shareholder and understanding of what is required, we will be putting forward case studies as part of our output of 20 per year for the next 2 years. And depending on how successful we are, we're expanding that to 25 to ensure that we provide and create the value as anticipated by our clients in the marketplace. Moving on to financial sustainability, this is just the budget put forward for the financial year 2023-2024, and focusing on the blue highlighted area. The total revenue is 491 million rand from the forecast of the 2022-2023 financial year, 448. So this is a growth of 9.6%. This is important that we maintain a growth rate of our commercial services and conformity assessment services that we provide, because there's a number of big ticket expense items that we need to manage, including employee benefits and other operational expenses that we need to manage as well as part of the organization, and at the same time make sure there's an element of sustainability in terms of profitability at the end of the day. So laboratory services, we've proposed a 13% increase from the forecast of 22-23. Certification of compliance, and that is a COCs, 25% increase. Product and system certification, an 8% increase in revenue, as well as sale of publications, 5% increase in revenue, with a total of 491. And obviously the income and the grant submitted by the Department of Trade and Industry brings the total income to 825 million, with the administrative and operating expenses of 766, taken into the final bottom line of net profitability of 1.5, close to 1.6 million rand for the financial year. Okay, it appears that my screen has frozen once again. Try and out of the system. Chair, I just have, I think, the last 2 slides as part of the presentation to conclude my presentation. Okay. Chair, so the capital expenditure for the MTS period, the next 3 years, is 431 million rand that we have put forward. And we're going to invest in 3 categories: ICT, in terms of the various systems that we need to digitalize and to enable operational efficiencies. The second being the laboratory infrastructure investment, and the third being the entire campus and its facilities. So this investment also includes the 130 million rand that has been earmarked by our shareholder for the aging testing infrastructure for the 3-year period. That is a really welcome submission and contribution by the shareholder to support the infrastructure, testing infrastructure within the organization. In addition, we've also received in excess of 20 million rand from the shareholder for piping and roofing. That is a significant project, especially the piping and reticulate system that we need to upgrade as part of a health and safety and a compliance issue for the organization as well. Contributing to the 431 million rand, 142 million rand is proposed to come from the outer years of profitability of the organization, and including annual support from the shareholder as well. But we need to ensure that we are financially viable to achieve the MTF capital expenditure for the next 3 years. The investment for the SABS goes beyond the 431 million rand. It's close to about 1 billion rand. But at the same time, we got to be very pragmatic in terms of the funds available, the profitability that they achieve, and how we secure that to support the capital expenditure and infrastructure spend as well. So we understand that the 431, at least for the next 3 years, is a reasonable contribution, and we will address specifically the high priority, high risk areas in terms of infrastructure development and support and facilities upgrade, including from a laboratory perspective, the element of return on investment as well. So those are the elements that we have put forward in terms of prioritization of the projects for capital investment. I'm going to move on to, Chair, this is the last slide, just to give you a summary of the 3 areas of the investment. So the 2023-2024 portfolio is 199 million rand of investment, capital investment. And we have defined the various projects from a laboratory perspective, and these will be submitted to the board for approval. And specifically on the ICT investment, this includes the establishment of an ERP system, which includes LIMS, SIMS upgrades, and SIM implementation, which is the Certification Implementation Management System, as well as the digital learning systems to be procured and executed as well. The facilities and security investment, roofing and piping, the roofing has already begun, and the piping is on specific prioritized projects that we are looking forward to execute. Fire and electrical compliance are other areas that we need to consider as part of our portfolio of capital investment for this year as well as the security upgrades. Chairperson, I think that's the final slide for the presentation, and I'll try to stop here and stop sharing, and I'd like to hand over to you at this point.
Thank you very much. Can I take this opportunity of greeting the chair of the board, Dr. Malinga, and afford you the opportunity, Doctor, to make a few remarks before I hand over to members. Dr. Malinga.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity. On behalf of the board, we thank you for the opportunity for us to present our corporate plan for this current financial year. And indeed, as the CEO, acting CEO has indicated, We are facing challenges on many fronts with regards to the competition and the changing landscape. But we believe that as the board, together with management, we have a noble mandate. And that's very, very important for the country in setting of standards and ensuring that there's certification. And as I've said even before, that the role that SABS play, particularly with regards to the public, we know SABS as the standards body, and whenever we see the mark of our entity, it assures us that the goods or the services of a higher standard. And we believe that that's a key role for us to play, more so as we, as a country, are facing the challenges that we're facing with regards to our exports and our trade deficit in terms of high technologies. And so we need to make sure that we don't allow cheap and substandard imports coming in. And at the same time, we believe that through our role as the South African Bureau of Standards, we can equip and enable our industry to be competitive globally. So we take our role very, very seriously, and we're very grateful for the work that has been done by our management. And so we started in December last year. And during this period, we've interacted well with our management as we try to exercise the oversight that we're expected to exercise as the board. As the CEO indicated, we are currently in the process of a recruitment of a permanent CEO. That process has not so far gone as we had intended, and we may have to re-advertise it, but that's something that we're still trying to handle as the board. We want to indicate that we're committed. The minister had implored us to ensure that we expedite the process so that there's stability within the organization. And so we are doing all that we can to ensure that we do that. With that, I would like to hand over back to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malinga. And it's good to see that SABS is on an upwards trajectory. Members, I hand over to you now. I'll take your hands for interaction with the presentation. Members?
Chair, we have Mr. McPherson and Mr. Bergman. That's fine, Chair.
Sorry.
Mr. Thring.
Okay.
Mr. Malamatia and Mr. Mbuyane, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Honorable McPherson.
Thanks very much. You know, it remains apparent and has been for many years that, you know, the SABS is just unable to compete, I think, you know, financially or possibly technically anymore with, you know, with the private sector. And I think one of the biggest mistakes was separating the SABS and the NRCS. It was a discussion under, I think under Jody, that she said that they were looking into sort of, you know, how do you rationalize the two bodies? And I just want to understand, is there any further progress on that in actually either rationalizing the two or even, frankly, shutting down the SABS to and simply, making the licenses available for testing. So more of an actual just compliance body than actual testing body. Thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Bergman.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the warm welcome. I appreciate it. Just my colleagues covered me a little bit because I was quite interested to find out if we have such a huge footprint across South Africa, why private companies would go elsewhere for testing, whether it would be a cost implication or whether it's a case of our efficiency. And if it's not, then it sounds to me that there's a possibility that our standards might be too high and that if you go to the private sector, that you're able to get a certification on some, with a substandard product. So I'm interested to find out whether we have an enforcement side of the company where we can actually, if we believe that a product is not of standard, that we can actually enforce ourselves on that product. We could actually test that product ourselves and see whether whether private testing units has actually tested that product correctly. And then number two, I was the treasurer of SADC, and I've got a keen interest in SADC. So when I hear that SABS is going across the borders, my ears prick up, and it's nice to hear that they're extending their reach. But of course, with the free trade agreement, we've got to look very carefully at the message that we're sending out. And we're looking at obviously our trade agreements with AGOA. We're looking at our trade agreements with having our with being with our trade shows with the other partners that were mentioned in this program. I think what would be important, given the current climate, is that SABS would obviously have to network some of these countries through the embassies beforehand, and just make sure that we're just sending out the right message on the technical basis first. And when it comes to SADC, I know that we're definitely open for business. That I think it would be foolish to try and get the AU to oversee a whole standard when you can start with just the SADC first as a pilot. And so I'd be watching with interest to see what we have in mind and how to implement such a footprint in SADC. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just 3 questions from my side. The first is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the SABS's turnaround plan? So we know that it's a process, and how would you rate that turnaround plan? Secondly, slide 18 on the predetermined targets, the income indicator of customer satisfaction survey was not measured for the financial year 2023. Why was this so? And then thirdly, what progress, if any, has been made in the development and implementation of the AFC FTA trade agreements in developing regional standards and conformity assessment guidelines? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Thring. Honorable Malamacha.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the presentation. Very good, informative, adequate, and decisive, and promising. One is very happy the manner in which SABS has improved from the previous report that we used to get. And one is also happy the manner you are going to approach the issue of the CFO. Unlike other institutes, you seem to behave in a plan. You will find the best, and I think the best will suit into the team. You will continue fulfilling your mandate. It's just one question, Comrade Chair, that I would like to be clarified. What program do they have in place to ensure that they do an outreach kind of program to let those who want to be in the market are able to meet them and be able to be assisted by them, so that it must not be a barrier when they are to do business with other entities that their product is not marked with the SABS. Saying that, Comrade Chair, I want to further say that SABS is seen everywhere, and their standardization is meetable to an extent that it do assist and it gives hope to the EU SABS, because it does guarantee that the quality of the product that has got their stamp do last forever. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malamacha. Honorable Mbuyani.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. Let me welcome the presentation by SABS. and also welcome the new chair, the board chair, Mr. Malinga. Chair, I think the presentation, it shows that there's a turnaround strategy that has been implemented in the SABS. And also it shows that maybe in terms of the local content verification, somewhere, somehow it improved, because now it has been changed from a turnaround time from 120 to at least 90 days. I'll just have some few clarity seeking question in terms of promoting quality with respect to commodities vis-a-vis the Black Industrialist and also the transformation program on the 45 outcomes that has been indicated there. In terms of their community awareness program, more especially in the awkward, like rural areas, as ourselves, we were rural-tarians. So we just want to check in terms of the community awareness program. And also whether there is an attempt to standardize the hemp and cannabis sector that has been pronounced by the president. Vis-a-vis the energy, green energy, and also the energy management inspection. I wanted just on clarity on those ones. Maybe on the other side, Chair, I will just check the inadequate investment in the laboratory sector and also the facility infrastructure, because we once had an oversight there, and we were able to see some pipe reticulation network that are not standard. And also we appreciated the organizational review. The only challenge is that how is the engagement with the organized labor vis-a-vis the organized the organizational structure? Maybe on the two things, one, the ICT modernization and cement lab, can we at least get an update as to where are they now in terms of the cement lab and also the ICT modernization? Chair, maybe the last one is around the green and ocean economy. Can we get more understanding as to where are they, because we're talking transformation also in terms of the standard on the green energy and also the ocean economy. Thank you very much, Chair. We'll pause here for now. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Biani. Honorable Mulder.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and from my side also welcome to our new colleague from the DA. My questions also regarding competitiveness. That is the buzzword that I wish to use. I think we all know, as we've recently visited South Korea, Seoul and Busan, what we saw there as far as testing and quality control is concerned. My question would also be if the SABS and NRCI's business models are still intact with modern tendencies and trends. And I remember I also asked the question in 2019, rather, well, in the beginning of the sixth parliament term, whether it's still sustainable. And we should ask ourselves that question: are we competitive? Are we still competitive? Isn't it time that we have a new look at the whole business model? Regardless of the fact that there is signs of a turnaround, which is good, I think it's time that South Africa becomes competitive in this way, in this field, as we used to be, as the presenter also indicated, that the SABS is a well-established organization, a once world-class organization. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mulder. Honorable Monakedi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, just to request that if my name could be corrected, I see in terms of members of the committee. My name is, my surname is captured as Modalani. Modalani is my first name. My surname is Monakedi. I think on the first issue that I wanted to touch on, I think it has been raised already. It was on the issue of content verification audit. My second point is on the support for SMMEs. The indication in terms of slide 22 is that they are targeting to spend 74.3 million procurement spend in support of SMMEs. I just want to check percentage-wise, how much does this translate into? Because it's possible that 74.3 million could be 5%, 10%. And perhaps if it is expressed in percentage terms, it could shed more light. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that was the last. Thank you, Honorable Monakedi. And we note the correction that must be done in terms of your names. I see no further hands. May I hand over to you, Dr. Bassoon, for responses? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Can I just ask Honorable Monakedi to mute? I see Dr. Zalk has also switched on his mic. Did you want to make a comment before we hand over to Dr. Bassoon, Dr. Zalk?
Yes, Chair. I want to make a couple of comments just on some of the high-level issues that have been raised before handing over to Dr. Bassoon in terms of some of the more technical questions. I think the one set of questions that was posed is around the role of SABS in relation to the private sector. And whether we should even consider shutting down SABS. I think the way that we need to understand the role of SABS in the system as one which is not, which is complementary to the activities of private sector parts of quality infrastructure issues. Obviously, the absolute fundamental role that SABS plays is the development of SA national standards. That cannot be outsourced to the private sector for obvious reasons. Then I think that the question on testing is really one of complementarity. So there are testing capabilities that SABS has. And then obviously there are also testing capabilities in the private sector. And I think the key question there really is, you know, what's an appropriate balance between the type of testing that SABS does and, you know, and is done elsewhere in a technologically more sophisticated world where it is necessary to have, you know, quite sophisticated capabilities to test in an increasingly number of complex areas. The second point or area was around some of the comments raised about the role of SABS in relation to regional integration and African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And again, here, SABS and the other quality infrastructure institutions have an exceptionally important role to play because there needs to be a shift towards, as far as possible, alignment of standards on the continent. I think there are some risks and concerns from a South African perspective, and huge opportunities. Obviously, the opportunities relate to the kind of economies of scale that you can get when you have standards that are common across countries. I mean, just one example, for instance, that is often raised by the retail sector is that, you know, sometimes they need to comply with different labeling standards and, you know, different kind of barcode standards. So the significant reductions in transaction costs that can be reaped by ensuring that there is greater alignment across the continent. I think another important element here is obviously that, you know, one doesn't want common standards that, you know, compromise consumer health and safety. So, you know, it's not about having some kind of race to the bottom, but rather about appropriate standards that can be adopted across multiple countries. Both were the, I think, the high-level policy issues that I want to make an input on, and then happy to hand over to the SABS management team to address some of the more technical issues. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Zalk. Dr. Bassoon.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, and thank you, Dr. Zalk, for addressing a few of the high-level questions that were raised. I will certainly respond to complement some of the observations and comments made by Dr. Zalk as well. So, Honourable McPherson, the issue around unable to compete with the private sector, I think this issue is something that we need to address from an SABS sustainability perspective. We, in the sense that we are a significant brand in the marketplace. Firstly, and first and foremost, development of national standards. That is our core mandate. So if anything, the SABS, in terms of its primary focus, is to develop national standards. That will not change. There is only one entity in every country that is responsible for development of national standards. So we have a legacy of conformity assessments, and we operated, you know, historically in two different eras of the SABS. And I think that's very important to appreciate that pre-1994, SABS was the entity. Everything had to be SABS approved, etc., because of the type of economy and the type of ecosystem that we operated in at the time. Now with the post-1994 and the free markets, everything is readily available, and we've got a lot of investment coming into the country, as well as new entities entering the market. We have to maintain our competitiveness. The SABS brand, as pointed out by one or two of the honourable members as well, is still a significant brand in the marketplace. There are other bodies out there that are providing conformity assessment, testing, certification, but we need to start questioning, are they accredited in the marketplace? Are they independent in the marketplace as a third-party quality assurance service provider? I can raise my hand and say SABS is this entity. So what we need to do is make sure that we allow ourselves to continuously improve, align ourselves to international best practice, and the standards are there. We just need to make sure that we identify those standards in terms of growth and the services that we provide, and more importantly, execute on those standards and allow ourselves to transition towards best models or even review the model. But taking away conformity assessments from the SABS portfolio of services is something that is really far and maybe will not even be considered by the SABS in the medium to long term, based on our transition and trajectory towards sustainability. Rationalization of the two entities. So NRCS has a very different portfolio and mandate. NRCS and SABS at the time when we were together served a particular purpose, and it served a particular purpose in a particular era. Post-2008, when the two entities were given two separate mandates to go out and provide your services in the sense that one is a regulator, and the other is providing conformity assessments and standards, which are for voluntary uptake by the marketplace. That is core and key towards self-declaration and minimizing issues around the burden on industry to be a highly regulated environment. NRCS is one regulator, the regulator from a compulsory specification perspective, reporting to the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. There are more than 300 regulators out in the marketplace that are providing regulatory portfolios of services in the marketplace, to which SABS provides national standards for these regulators to adopt and include as part of their regulatory tools. So very different mandates. I personally, and this is my view, don't see the rationalization and the inclusion of a regulatory authority into the SABS, because the best practice, international best practice, is in terms of mature quality infrastructure institutions, the regulatory body, and it's part of best practice as well. The regulatory body is not part of a national standards body because of conflict of interest, meaning that you are developing a standard, you're providing conformity assessments to the standard, and you're developing regulations, meaning that invariably you become your own monopoly in terms of driving the mandatory standards and conformity assessments in one entity. That is that element of conflict of interest, which was addressed in 2008 to separate the entities. But I think we can have further discussions on this to further sensitize the issues around rationalization and getting a better understanding of how the quality infrastructure institutions operate, and they support each other in driving the efficient economy in South Africa. Honorable Bergman, privatization, I think it alludes to the similar comment by Honorable McPherson for testing and certification. So SABS standards too high. Actually, it's not too high. It's what the market requires, and the market is the representatives from the market themselves who are sitting in our technical committees to develop these national standards. As I said, we administer the governance process towards development of national standards, but the technical content comes from the experts in the marketplace. We have homegrown standards where we don't have international standards, and we have adoption of international and regional standards as well. So that the element of decision making on which standard is relevant or not, the level of standards that we have published is dictated and dominated by the experts that are participating in the technical committees. And certainly we're not a regulator. We can't go out into the marketplace and draw samples from the marketplace and start testing to it and determining whether they comply or not. That's the responsibility of the regulators and the various regulators in the marketplace. So we need to make sure that we stay far away from regulators and allow the regulators to implement their mandate, because regulators go through a very rigorous process of determining why should you regulate and what impact, financial, non-financial impact, the regulators will have or regulations will have in the marketplace, which the consumer and the manufacturers will have to bear at some time or the other. In terms of SADC stand, so in terms of SADC, we are a founding member of SADC stand, South African developing country for standardization, or development country portfolio for standardization, and we participate in SADC stand technical committees to harmonize standards. But in the recent adoption and implementation of a continental free trade area, SADC stand has become secondary to the regional standard bodies of ARSO and AFSEC. SADC stand is not referenced in the continental free trade area agreement. It's ARSO and AFSEC. So SADC stand needs to participate within ARSO and AFSEC to determine the and set guidelines towards the harmonization of regional standards. But suffice to say, we do participate in SADC stand as part of the SACU free trade area and movement of goods and services in terms of support of our national companies as well, in terms of movement of our goods into the SADC region. We have a number of bilateral agreements, and this is from a standards perspective with the various national standards bodies. Just recently, just to inform you that we've signed an agreement on certification activities with the BOPS, which is the Botswana Bureau of Standards, and this is to do consignment inspection from an SABS perspective of products that are entering BOPS. And we test those products and make sure that they are certified, and those products are now transitioned to Botswana as part of a value proposition, quality assurance service for food and agricultural products. And that is going to be expanded to other sectors as well, like electrotechnical. So this is one of the type of services that the SABS provides in terms of quality assurance in the work that we do to support the area, the SADC area. Honorable Thring, rating of 1 to 10 turnaround plan. I will, and from my perspective, I will give a rating of 7. We are just in the month of February, we were presenting the turnaround plan. A lot has been done within the last 3 to 4 years of the turnaround plan, but much needs to be further done, which we haven't started as well as other areas, initiatives and projects need to be matured as well. So as part of the phase of where we were between the fix the business and chart a new course. That's where we were, in the middle. So and my proposal of 7 is based on a number of initiatives that we have implemented in terms of, firstly, addressing the financial sustainability of the organization, addressing the infrastructure. As much as we haven't done as much as we should be doing, we have the investment, and we're proposing projects now to allow for the infrastructure upgrades to take place to support laboratories as well as the broader facilities. Slide 18, the customer satisfaction survey. Sure, in the 2022-2023, we had a net promoter score. We've basically tried to introduce a new methodology or a new indicator, which is referred to as net promoter score, which is, it's very a lot of companies are using that type of methodology or that type of indicator. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to mature the indicator to get a significant value addition from the net promoter score. We are still in the midst of trying to finalize the methodology, and we couldn't conclude on that. So for the 23-24, we have gone back to our tried and tested customer satisfaction surveys, including elements whereby the customer has the opportunity to address and comment on any issues that they would like to contribute to in terms of good or bad or poor service delivery, etc., which is very value-adding comments from that type of customer satisfaction survey as opposed to the net promoter score. The continental free trade area, so there's a significant amount of work that we do in the continental free trade area, and this is under the auspices of the regional standards bodies. We have to work within the Pan-African Quality Infrastructure, PACI, and the body that we report to or are member of is ARSO, African Organization for Standardization, and the other, which is in the electrotechnical space, is the African Electrotechnical Commission. So we participate in, as pointed out, in the development of these standards, harmonized standards, one standard, one test method, etc., which will result in one conformity assessment. We also, have a number of leadership roles that we have transitioned to in the recent past, very recent past. We are part of the Council of ARSO, which is responsible for governance, direction, overseeing the work of ARSO, and we've put forward a number of initiatives in terms of good governance matters that ARSO needs to consider around harmonization. We also we are a secretariat of the Conformity Assessment Committee at ARSO. And being the secretariat, you have a significant amount of influence on what goes into the committee and how we manage the work profile as well as the deliverables. So there's a number of guidelines on conformity assessments that have already been published within this committee and adopted by Council of ARSO as well, which are available, readily available for organizations, entities within the respective member countries of ARSO to include and implement as part of supporting a movement of goods and services within the continent. So those are the two initiatives in there. But other additional leadership profiles includes the Standards Management Committee, which is the key committee which approves the harmonized standards at ARSO. Currently, there's more than 1,000 standards that are approved as harmonized standards within ARSO. I must say that a number of them, a fair percentage of them, are very historical, outdated standards that we must address as part of the Standards Management Committee and either deem them non-relevant, or at the same time we take them back to redevelop these standards. We're talking about standards since the 1980s, 1970s, etc. A fair share of them needs to be reconsidered, and they haven't been really reviewed within the period of time that they should be reviewed, which is every 5 years for relevance. So we've put together a number of initiatives and programs, or projects rather, proposed this to ARSO in terms of support for the free trade area. Honorable Malamatya, the outreach program and how do we assist customers from specific areas. So our customer partnering division is primarily focused within this area and the scope of work to go out and engage with firstly our existing customers, and engaging with our existing customers is not good enough because we focused on a particular sector and a particular class of customers. We look at the top 100 and make sure that we run a sustainable business, and we get recurring business, and then we get on selling of products and services as well. We have not matured into the space of an effective outreach program for the areas like the rural areas and underprivileged areas to go on and provide and promote and advocacy services on the value of and impact of standards and conformity assessments. That's why it's in terms of our first year alignment, we're looking to at least 5 outreach programs. And we haven't really defined those areas as yet. It's going to be part and parcel of our work this year. It's going to be finalized within this quarter, so we can go out and do that work in terms of outreach program. However, our digital marketing and promotion is something that we've embraced and we've enhanced over the recent years. We use a number of social media platforms in terms of our Facebook, our LinkedIn accounts, our Twitter accounts, promoting SABS, etc. But the counter to that will say, well, connectivity and digitization, etc. Is it really having an impact on the underprivileged areas? So that's something that will be coming as a counter statement in terms of what we're doing. But I think we need to embrace digitalization and hopefully the total infrastructure around connectivity from a national perspective supports SABS in terms of our digitalization and promotion of services in the digital channels and social media of the SABS. Honorable Mbuyani, promoting quality in terms of commodities. So our key focus is to make sure that the standards that we develop in the marketplace, we promote them on a weekly basis. Once again, it's being done on our digital media, but our engagement with our existing customers as well as new customers on products and the availability of product certifications and new product certifications is something that we need to further embrace. I think historically we've maintained our existing portfolio of about 5,000 customers in the marketplace with product certifications. Some of them have been loyal for several decades, and we're getting new entrants. But the new entrants, we need to embrace with new standards for their type of business as well, either system certification or product certification. So there's a number of standards that are out there for new products, including agro-processing, and we'll get to cannabis and hemp as well in terms of our initiatives. The focus is to have, as part of our new structure, a product development portfolio within the SABS, so that we develop new schemes for new products in the marketplace, and based on the appetite of the various industries and companies in the marketplace to have a new scheme, we will introduce these new schemes, because new schemes from a commercial perspective has an element of expenses to create the new scheme, for it to be accredited in the marketplace, to cost the scheme, and then to provide the services and achieve revenue. But that's all part of the commercial revenue sustainability aspect that the SABS needs to look at. And we need to mature that. I must emphasize, our new product development and scheme development is something that is not adequate enough for us to maintain further sustainability and further revenue generation. Hemp and cannabis, sure, it's a very important strategic program within the SABS. We recently launched our stakeholder engagement program. I think it was in the month of February, on developing a technical committee specific for hemp and cannabis. Hemp, we all know, has so much of industrial applications in the textile industry, in the construction industry, in the automotive industry. There's just so many applications, and there are standards, some standards that have been developed from ISO perspective, but there will be peculiar standards that will be developed from a South African perspective as well. So the technical committee has been launched. We've officially had the stakeholder engagement, established the technical committee. The work now needs to go towards developing a business plan, the scope specifically within the hemp and cannabis industries, bearing in mind that there's an element of medicinal application, which is not part of the SABS scope of work. It is outside of the Bureau. It resides within the Department of Health and SAPRA and registration of the medicinal applications. But we're looking from industrial application of how we provide relevant standards to support the industry. So too, energy management. A simple example is the energy management ISO 50001 certification scheme that we are looking at. We're also engaging with the shareholder on a very important project on greenhouse gas carbon emissions quantification and allowing for an element of conformity assessments around that. And this will result in tax concessions, which I don't know too much about anyway, as part of implementing this conformity assessment scheme around energy management and addressing climate change as well. The investment in facilities and testing, it's not ideal or where we would like to be, but we are where we are currently as an organization. And I put forward the 430 million rand in the next 3 years that we need to invest in. I think we're comfortable that we could implement these projects and allow for an element of sustainability. It is an area of growth over the period of 5 to 10 years as a long-term strategy. So the resources become an element of concern as well in terms of how much can we expend in the next 3 years while maintaining the current infrastructure and building the capacity to develop revenue as well. And those are the trade-offs and the balances that we need to look at. I mentioned that we are going to prioritize the specific high-risk areas around compliance and health and safety within the organization around facilities and testing. Testing has 150 million rand in the next 3 years. And again, it's going to be focused on which areas are significantly deficient in terms of infrastructure upgrades, and where are the new areas that we need to participate in testing to develop new test laboratories and new infrastructure. That is the focus. One is to maintain revenue, the other is to grow revenue, and we have to have justifications for both of the areas. The engagement with labor and the organization structure. So we have had a very successful engagement with labor in the last couple of years. Sure, we're going to have a number of conflicting viewpoints, but I think we've been able to manage and engage labor quite professionally and maturely to reach a stage where we are, where we had concluded the Section 189 quite amicably, and now we're in the process of transitioning to the new organizational structure. We do not have at this stage any significant issues that are pending or brewing from a labor perspective. Suffice to say that there will be normal engagements and issues and concerns raised as part of the normal course of duty with executive management and the management teams with labor. Two very important initiatives that are ongoing currently, which I would like to highlight, which is the review of the bargaining unit, the agreement, that is a 2015 agreement, collective bargaining unit agreement, and the second one will be engaging on the mandate on salary increases for the financial year 23-24. So that's currently ongoing. The cement laboratory, we mentioned that in our previous presentation at the committee as part of the turnaround plan, that we had 60% capacitated the laboratory in terms of extending the laboratory, in terms of an additional workstation. The equipment, 100% has been achieved, and in terms of receiving all the equipment, we're currently now in the process of commissioning the equipment of the laboratory and building capacity as well. For the laboratory to make sure that we meet the turnaround times. One of the key areas was around turnaround times and the long time frames it takes to manage the testing processes. And we trust that this additional workbench will reduce the turnaround time and allow us to operate a little bit more efficiently to serve the needs of the private sector. ICT modernization. So our ICT structure, as part of the organizational review and Section 189 process, we lost a few very critical resources in that area because they become highly marketable. And in the world of digitization, once you have these skills out, you lose those skills. It's very difficult to get them back. So in the process of capacitating the ICT division with the requisite resources, and at this stage, we proposed 100 million rand of ICT infrastructure as part of our capital expenditure for this financial year, which we are looking forward to implement, which will be ERP, amongst other things, digitalization of certification and upgrading the laboratory information management system as well. But we need the adequate resources first to manage these significant projects. The green economy and oceans economy, there are a number of standards that we've published related to the green economy. And we certainly can provide a list of those standards. I don't have them offhand, but the green economy highlights areas of energy efficiency. It highlights areas of battery technologies. It highlights areas of various schemes that are available around energy labeling to support energy management. And we also get entering into the process of energy audits that the certification department is currently considering. The oceans economy, we have standards that we've published. These relate to small craft and building of small crafts and maintenance of these crafts as well as fisheries and aquaculture. We have offhand about 14 standards that we've published around fisheries and aquaculture. So with that, we can submit a list of the standards that we have published which are already available on the green economy and oceans economy in terms of how we support that area. Honorable Mulder, on competitiveness testing and quality control, it related to SABS and NRCS and the models, business models. I think I've addressed that upfront in terms of the initial question around SABS and NRCS. And I must iterate, they are separate entities, separate mandates with totally different portfolios that needs to be implemented as part of the market and support of industrialization ambitions of the country. Yes, we are competitive. And if we look at the plethora of services that we have in certification, as much as we have a downward, a decline in the number of customers in the recent past in certification, I think this is basically a reflection of the market. And this was basically due to COVID and post-COVID impacts and the significant impacts of global trends that are impacting our national economy as well, that's impacting the various companies, let alone, I mean, load shedding having a huge impact on sustainability of companies as well. So in terms of certification, just to give you a high level indication, we have had cancellations from certification clients for a number of reasons. One is they can't sustain themselves. They're not competitive in the marketplace, and the cost of doing business becomes much more difficult, and they have to close down, unfortunately. The second is they are unable to meet the requirements of the certification scheme. And these are not onerous requirements. These are national standards. And again, the national standards are developed by the stakeholders. So that's basically two of the increasing reasons of some of our certification clients leaving the organization. We are seeing an upward trend in terms of our revenue in testing, which is very encouraging. We've for the first time in a few years, our testing revenue has increased from our budget from the previous years. So that's a good trend, but we still need to do more in terms of building capacity and certain requisite skills and competencies in specific laboratories. But if it's a general statement around competitiveness, I would say that we are competitive in the marketplace in majority of the services that we offer in the market. Support for SMMEs, the percentage, Honorable Monakedi, I don't have that offhand. Unfortunately, maybe it's something that we should have considered upfront. I think it's a very important question. I can maybe present this question to my colleague Lerato Matras if she has an answer for that. If not, we'll certainly provide a written submission on that particular question, Honorable Monakedi. Honorable Chairperson, I think those were the questions that were posed, and I trust I provide adequate responses to some of the questions and observations and comments made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bassoon. I don't see any further hands. Can I just check if there are follow-up questions from members? Okay, Ms. Matras.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think to Honorable Monakedi's a question on support for SMME, noting that majority of our spend is really on employee cost, but the portion that relates to the procurement spend, SMME support for this year is envisaged at 40%. I think we also take note of the fact that there have been changes to the regulation, so it has not really been tested with the new regulation, and we'll have a better feel of that towards the end of the second quarter. But for this year, the forecasted is basically 40% of the procurement spend. I think it answers that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Ms. Matras. Thank you. Then I don't see any further hands from members. I then wish to thank the DTIC team and SABS team that has been on the platform today, and thank you for your presentation. We will, of course, given the 7 out of 10 rating on the turnaround strategy, we will continue to closely monitor, as we have in the past, the SABS performance against the indicators that has been presented to us today. So with that, thank you very much. Can I then just check with the committee secretary if there are any announcements before we close the meeting?
Chair, just the announcement for tomorrow's meeting. We will be having a briefing by the NRCS on their 2023-24 strategic annual performance plan. And then also we will formally consider the Limpopo and Gauteng oversight report. Just to remind members, we work through the report, Chair, in the previous quarter, and it's just a matter of tomorrow of formally adopting that report. We will distribute the clean version soon after the meeting for members just to have. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. That concludes our business for the day. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair and Honourable
Thank you.
members.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Board and management.
Long
Thank
live
you.
the chair. Long live the chair.
Thank you, Chair. Bye,
Thank you,
colleagues.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. And
Recording stopped.
Before